Saudi Arabia and Iran have agreed to restore diplomatic relations and reopen embassies
after a 7-year diplomatic breach which has fueled tensions in the Gulf.
Recently, Saudi Arabia and Iran agreed to restore diplomatic ties after 7 years of hostility. This agreement was groundbreaking because the two nations had been bitter rivals for decades, particularly after the 2016 incident when Saudi Arabia executed Shia cleric Nimr al-Nimr. The execution sparked protests in Iran, leading to the storming and burning of the Saudi embassy in Tehran, which caused both countries to cut ties. In 2024, Saudi Arabia's Chief of Staff, General Fayyad al-Ruwaili, made a historic visit to Tehran.
Saudi Arabia's top military chief is in Iran with a high-ranking delegation.
This was the first time in decades that a senior Saudi military official traveled to Iran. During this visit, both sides discussed strengthening military cooperation and regional security. Iranian officials described the meeting as productive and a step toward building trust between the two nations. Shortly after this visit, Iran announced that Saudi Arabia would join its military drills in the Sea of Oman and the Red Sea. These drills included naval ships, submarines, and aircraft from both countries. It was a historic milestone of the first ever military collaboration between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The exercises occurred in November 2024, focusing on the Sea of Oman, the Red Sea, and strategic choke points like the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb that is crucial for global oil shipping routes. Admiral Shahram Irani, the commander of Iran's navy, stated that the drills aim to enhance maritime security, combat piracy, and foster stronger bilateral relations. This cooperation is significant because it shows a dramatic shift in their relationship. For years, Saudi Arabia and Iran were on opposite sides of regional conflicts. For example, in Yemen, both countries supported two groups of conflict. Saudi Arabia led a coalition supporting the Yemeni government, while Iran backed the Houthi rebels. Now, their joint military actions send a strong message that they are serious about working together. The reconciliation also reflects China's growing role in Middle Eastern diplomacy. By brokering this deal of the coalition of Saudi Arabia and Iran, China positioned itself as a key mediator in a region that was previously dominated by US influence. This shift has allowed Saudi Arabia and Iran to explore new partnerships without relying solely on Western powers. For the United States, the growing closeness between Saudi Arabia and Iran is a major challenge, as it undermines decades of US strategy in the Middle East. Washington has long relied on Saudi Arabia as a key ally to counter Iran's influence in the region. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution,
to the Islamic movement of the Ayatollahs.
The number killed in Tehran since the beginning of the month is probably well over 100.
The US has worked to isolate Iran through sanctions and military pressure while maintaining close ties with Saudi Arabia by selling billions of dollars in weapons, providing security guarantees. For example, Saudi Arabia has the largest buyer of US arms, with deals worth over $13,000 million. However, this strategy is now unraveling. In March 2023, China brokered a historic agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran to restore diplomatic ties after 7 years of hostility. This deal marked a turning point as both nations began cooperating on regional issues. This growing partnership directly challenges US influence in the region. For decades, Washington sought to align Saudi Arabia with Abraham Accords, which aimed to isolate Iran further. However, Saudi Arabia's decision to engage with Tehran instead has derailed these efforts. Moreover, Riyadh's willingness to cooperate with Iran reflects broader frustrations among Gulf states about America's reliability as a security partner. For instance, after the U.S. muted response to Houthi attacks on Saudi oil facilities in 2019, many Gulf nations began questioning Washington's commitment to their defense. This shift is part of a larger trend in which regional powers are reducing their dependence on the US and exploring alternative partnerships. By working with Iran and deepening ties with China, such as joining BRICS in 2024, Saudi Arabia is signaling its intent to pursue a more independent foreign policy. For Washington, this represents not just a setback, but a potential realignment of power dynamics in the Middle East that could reshape its role in the region entirely. The effects of the new partnership between Saudi Arabia and Iran already shaking up the Middle East, and US allies like Israel are deeply worried. For Israel, which has long relied on Saudi Arabia as a quiet partner against Iran, this growing cooperation is a serious concern. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has focused much of his diplomacy on isolating Iran and normalizing ties with Saudi Arabia. However, the recent military drills between Saudi Arabia and Iran in the Gulf of Oman have made this goal much harder to achieve. According to AP News experts say this rapprochement has thrown cold water on Israel's hopes of forming an anti-Iran coalition in the region. Smaller Gulf nations like the UAE and Bahrain, which normalized relations with Israel under the U.S.-brokered Abraham Accords, are also paying close attention. These countries have worked closely with Saudi Arabia as part of a U.S.-backed coalition in the region. However, Saudi Arabia's warming ties with Iran could lead them to rethink their strategies. The UAE, for instance, resumed formal relations with Iran last year, signaling its own shift toward balancing regional relationships. China's role in brokering the Saudi-Iran deal has further highlighted its growing influence in the Middle East. By facilitating this agreement in March 2023, China demonstrated its ability to mediate between rival powers in a region traditionally dominated by US influence. Meanwhile, Russia has close ties with Iran and has occasionally worked with Saudi Arabia on oil production through Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC-C. Russia could also benefit from this new alignment. If Saudi Arabia and Iran strengthen their bond, Russia may use this opportunity to push back against US influence not just in the Middle East, but globally. Saudi Arabia and Iran together control around 20% of the world's proven oil reserves, making their cooperation a potential game-changer for global energy markets. If they decide to coordinate on oil production, they could influence prices significantly. For example, Saudi Arabia, as the largest producer in petroleum exporting countries, it has historically used its output to stabilize or manipulate global oil prices. Iran, despite sanctions, still produces 3.26 million barrels per day and has been increasing exports, especially to China. Joint action between these two nations could tighten supply and drive up prices, which would hurt countries like the US that rely on steady oil prices for economic stability. On the military side, the combination of Saudi Arabia's advanced U.S.-made weapons and Iran's missile and drone technology could shift the balance of power in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia has spent over $100 billion on US arms in the past decade, giving it one of the most advanced air forces in the region. Meanwhile, Iran has developed one of the largest missile arsenals in the world and is known for its advanced drone technology, which has been used effectively in regional conflicts like Yemen and recently in Israel. If these two nations combine their military capabilities or align strategically, it could limit US freedom of operation in the region. This growing partnership is part of a larger shift in global politics. China played a key role in brokering the Saudi-Iran deal, showcasing its rising influence in the Middle East. Russia also stands to benefit from closer ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Both countries are part of oil production country, where Russia collaborates with them on oil production policies. A stronger Saudi-Iran partnership could align with Moscow's interests by challenging US dominance in both energy markets and geopolitics. The Middle East is changing in ways we've never seen before. Saudi Arabia and Iran working together could shift power in the region and even the world. With China stepping in as a mediator, Russia looking for opportunities, and the US and Israel rethinking their plans, what will this mean for countries like the UAE, Bahrain, and even India, which depends on Gulf oil? What do you think? Will this new partnership bring peace, or will it create new challenges? Share your thoughts in the comments, and we'll feature the best one in our channel along with your name. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on these big global changes.